What's going on, guys? My name is Johnny. Welcome back to the shop. Today we're making these custom furniture legs. A client had asked me to make them new legs for their bed since they didn't like the old plastic cheap ones that came with it. So after going through a couple different design ideas, we ended up going with this one, and I'm making it out of solid walnut. Another reason for remaking these legs was to lift up the bed a little bit higher. That way there can be some more storage underneath the bed. There's a total of 6 legs that are going to go into this bed, and what you've seen me do so far is rough cut these pieces to length. The next step is to joint them and get a flat face and square edge. Then I move over to the planer to flatten the other face. With that done, I can rip these pieces to their final width, which was just over 3.5 inches. The design for this leg is a square on top, and then it tapers down to a smaller square on the bottom. The upper square is 3.5 by 3.5 inches, and the walnut stock that I'm using is just under 2 inches thick, which means I needed to glue 2 of these pieces together to come up with the final 3.5 thickness that I need. After the glue was set, off camera I moved over to the planer and planed them down to their final thickness and made sure all faces were square. With that all done, I trim and square up one end of these blanks on the miter saw. Then I attach a stop block to the sacrificial base and fence of my miter saw. That way I can reference up against it and make sure all of these 6 legs were the exact same length. The thickness that my sacrificial base added didn't allow me to cut all the way through, so I had to finish up the cut with a handsaw. Next, I needed to cut a taper on each of the 4 faces of this leg, and I thought using the bandsaw would be the best way to go about this. After cutting off 2 of the opposite faces, I tape them back onto the blank so that I have a square reference to reference up against the bandsaw table with. Then I repeat the same process to cut the opposite 2 faces. Every time I use a bandsaw, I'm always left with a rough, somewhat uneven cut. If you have any tips or blades that you like to use that would help remedy this, leave them down below, and I would love to hear what has helped you in the past. With the 4 faces all cut, I move back to my workbench and start to smooth them out with a hand plane. This really made quick work of it, and each face just took a couple passes. Next, I needed to add a tapered chamfer to each corner of the leg. I had a few different ideas on how to go about this using the router or maybe the bandsaw, but I ultimately settled on using the table saw. I made this quick jig out of MDF that rides in the miter slot, and I have the blade set to 45 degrees. Now that the shape is all cut, we can move on to sanding and finishing. And with that, it's all done. Thank you for sticking around to the end. If you want to follow along with these projects in real time, be sure to follow me over on Instagram, and there's a link for that down in the description. If you have any questions about this build, leave them down below and I will be more than happy to answer them. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.